2022 Genesis GV70 with the 3.5 liter twin turbo V6. How good is this new entry into the small luxury crossover segment? Today we're gonna find out. Rolling onto the throttle here from a stop, and there's a speed limit. So 35 miles an hour. It doesn't take anything for this 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 to get there. It has 375 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque. It is by far, like, it is just ridiculous how much power for about 50 to 60K. This vehicle is top of line, it's around 65K. It's just ridiculous you can get that much power for the price. Simple as that. I would not be getting that much power in this vehicle, so we'll talk more about the powertrains later. We need to talk about the design first. The exterior design on this vehicle is really strong. Genesis vehicles continue to get better and better looking. It has the Matterhorn white paint on it, which I'm gonna say don't pay an extra $1,500 for because it's just not worth it in my opinion. It seems a little bit thin. It's glossy in the sun, and the shade it's matte. I mean, it's a cool paint color, but it shows every single little bug you get on the vehicle, and I've already seen a few chips on it, and it doesn't have that many miles. So outside of the paint color, I mean, the grille, it's not overly large like it is in the GV80. I think it feels more at home here in the GV70. The quad LED headlights that are, you know, split top to bottom, the parallel running lights, which is a huge design theme that will go on Genesis vehicles for the foreseeable future. That was a huge thing they talked about with their announcement in 2025 that they'll be going fully electric. If you want the twin turbo V6, you got to get it between now and 2025. But anyways, you know, I've been stopped a few times in car line by the teachers at my daughter's school, and they're like, "Oh man, how do you like your Genesis?" I'm like, well, you know, one, it's not mine, but two, yes, I really like it. It's really, really good. It's not perfect, we'll find out later. And then another one today, he's like, you know, I don't like crossovers, but the Genesis GV70 looks really good. And it does. It looks really fantastic for a crossover SUV. It's got the long hood. It's got the big wheels on this model. It's got the sloping roofline, kind of like a coupe-like design. You gotta love bikers as I try to get around it. And then this has the huge circular exhaust tips that are definitely making a statement from behind. You got Genesis stamped on the liftgate, a little button on the liftgate at the windshield wiper to lift it up. Yeah, I don't think anyone is gonna look at this vehicle and think it's ugly. The GV80 kind of has some weird proportions to it, but I can't find anything about the looks of this GV70 that just don't sit right with me. There is one weird thing about the design on the Sport Prestige package, is that you kind of have the mesh pattern at the bottom of the front bumper and the bottom of the rear bumper, but at the bottom of the doors, to continue that trim, they went with like a glossy dark black sort of metallic looking finish instead of the mesh pattern. So I would have liked to see that mesh pattern continued on the bottom of the doors to match the front bumpers, but other than that, like, I think it looks really, really good. Now the interior, I probably need to pull off to the side of the road here to talk about the interior because it's just ridiculous. All right, time to talk about that interior. Whoa, first impressions when you get in here. Well, one, it's red in this particular color. It's got the leather, the Napa leather seats with the ultra suede interior. The seats are pretty comfortable, but it's they're a little bit on the firmer edge, which you would expect in a sport package. I feel like I'm sitting on top of the seat instead of into the seat, so they can do some work there to make it more comfortable. But the customization I have on my driver's seat is silly. So I have thigh extension. I also have bolstering control to make it tighter or looser. And I also have lumbar control. No surprise, I can raise and lower the seat. No surprise, I can lean back, lean forward. But you also have a button that cycles through pelvic stretching. Okay, so it has massaging seats, lumbar stretching, and whole body stretching. And if you've been in the vehicle for like an hour, it'll automatically start using the massaging seats to refreshen your body. It's quite phenomenal. And in terms of the materials in here, it's soft touch everywhere. The stitching across the dash is phenomenal. A huge amount of red in here, which is okay. It's not like an overly bright red, so it is quite attractive. But even the glove box has a soft touch feel to it, and the ornamentation is jaw-dropping if you like carbon fiber. You have it on the doors, you also have it along the center console here, and you also have it on the rear doors as well. So like, if you enjoy carbon fiber, the pattern in here is really pretty, and I just want to eat it up. And lastly, for materials, this suede roof liner is exquisite, and what you get for about $65K in terms of amenities is great. Okay, 14-inch touchscreen. The problem is with this touchscreen, it's too far out of reach, so I've kind of adapted to the rotary dial against my will. It works well. It's just that if you're gonna have a touchscreen, make it usable so I don't have to literally get out of my seat to be able to play with it. Android Auto works great on it. The problem is with Android Auto is that it only takes up half the screen, whereas the navigation, as you guys can see right here, the navigation takes up the whole screen if you use the inbuilt navigation. The Lexicon sound system is great in here. It's not the loudest I've tested, but it still sounds really, really good when you push it to the max. Ambient lighting in here is amazing. I love playing with it. I think with this red interior, I think the blue contrast or the purple contrast that I typically stick with looks the best, but you can pick whatever colors you like. And the LED lighting not only goes around the gauges here, which this is all digital, I really like it, but it also goes around the carbon fiber in the center. You also have it in the storage compartments of the door. So the LED lighting in here is the best I've seen. The steering wheel quality is really, really good. You have a customizable start button in here on the steering wheel that you can attribute different functions to it. The volume controls here, as well as all of your safety controls on the right hand side. The autonomous driving or the driving assist in here are really, really good. I mean, I drove all the way to Palm Beach and back with this vehicle, and the radar cruise control is great, as well as the lane centering. And it also helps with lane departure. So if you put the blinker on, the vehicle will turn into the next lane for you, but it never changes the lane fast enough for me. Heads-up display is really good. It's not the best I've tested, but it is bright, and it's better implemented than it was on the GV70, so improvement for Genesis there. And then the sunroof is quite bizarre. It's huge, and I love huge sunroofs. The problem is it's tinted really, really, really dark. Like, I can pretty much look straight into the sun and not have sunspots in my eyeball. So if it's not the middle of the day, it might be hard to see out of it. So that's kind of defeating the point of a sunroof. And behind the steering wheel, I have the 3D MID that I had in the GV80. It's kind of like a Nintendo 3DS, if you remember those back in the day. So it looks at your eyeballs to determine the 3D effect, and it's all right. It's definitely a gimmick. It's not a needed feature. And as I back out of this parking spot, the 360 camera in here is phenomenal. It's high quality, it's responsive, it shows all the lines that I need. And yes, the drive-by wire rotary dial is kind of confusing at times because it's the exact same size as the rotary dial for the infotainment. And in the back seat, obviously I don't spend a whole lot of time back there, but in the back seat, you do have USB chargers, you have a plug-in for laptops, things like that. And in terms of legroom in that back seat, I wasn't impressed. You know, this vehicle seems a lot longer and more substantial than something like even the new NX that I've spent time with, that I'll have a review on in a week or so after this review. But yeah, the legroom wasn't impressive back there. And in the cargo, good amount of cargo space. You can fold down the seats from the back, and you also have a spare tire, so I love that feature. Spare tires are kind of a rare commodity nowadays. And now that we're out on the road, we need to talk about how this vehicle is like to drive. I've been driving it a ton. I almost have 500 miles on it. I'm getting 22 miles per gallon, and that's a ton of highway driving in there as well, at around 80 miles an hour going across Alligator Alley to get to the East Coast and back. It's not very fuel efficient, but that's what you give up in terms of performance. So this has, like I said, the twin turbo V6 that is pretty much unusable at most times, because even if you need to pass someone on the highway, you get up to speed like instantly, which is great, But I'm just saying, like, you could save 10 grand and get all the features that you have on this exact vehicle and get the 300 horsepower turbo 4-cylinder, which I've tested that engine and all-wheel drive setup and the same transmission. This is an 8-speed non-dual clutch, so normal torque converter transmission. I've tested that on the 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe Calligraphy, which that vehicle had plenty of power for me. So I would easily give up the twin turbo V6, which is just going to get me into trouble and swallow up more gas than I really need. So this will do 0 to 60 in around 5 seconds. That's super fast for any vehicle, but especially an SUV. And as I'm sitting here at a stop, there's a feature of this car that I don't like at all, and it's the auto start and stop button. You can defeat it over here on the left-hand side, but every time you start up the vehicle, it turns back to normal. So what does that do? Well, when you're at a stop like this in hot Florida, the engine will shut down, and then the AC goes to like a power saving mode so you don't drain the battery, right? Well, that's going to, one, make you hot in Florida, and two, it is extremely interrupting when the engine turns on and off. It shakes the whole car and it wobbles back and forth. It is not a good experience. And then my heads-up display as well as the audio system just let me know that the vehicle in front of me is driving away, which is typically a good feature to have on a vehicle, but sometimes it does get a little bit annoying because I don't need, it's defeatable, mind you, but it does get annoying sometimes if you know the vehicle is already moving ahead of you. Now, this does have an electronic limited slip differential. If you guys ever feel like pushing this vehicle to the max, you do have adaptive dampers, I believe, in the rear, and you have different drive modes, which is going to make the vehicle behave much differently. I'm always in comfort mode because I like a luxurious, comfortable experience when I'm in an expensive luxury car. Some people, since you're, you know, like if you're in the Sport Prestige package that I'm in right now, you can flip it down to sport mode, immediately downshifts, and I'm cruising at 2,500 RPM. If I put it into Sport Plus again, it downshifts again, and I'm running about 4,000 RPM, and if I just hammer it, I'm gone. Like, and I don't need to go that fast. Like, this vehicle, some of you might be like, you know, it's good that we have this much power. It is, but I'm telling you, you can get yourselves into trouble with 375 horsepower and over about 400 pound-feet of torque available at any given time. So save yourself some speeding tickets, save yourself from spending an extra 10 grand, just get the 4-cylinder turbo with the Sport Prestige package because you get all the features that this vehicle does have. In terms of ride quality, I mean, this thing is smooth as butter. It's quiet. It handles the imperfections in the road pretty well. I mean, I have excellent streets here. There's a GV80. I have excellent streets here in Naples, so it's, yeah, the 21s are right at home here. But I'm going to get on the brakes really hard here and talk about the brakes. Pretty progressive, pretty linear, but there's something about these brakes that really drive me up the wall, and I had the same issue with the GV80. And that is that as you get into the brakes, the engine, or so the transmission starts downshifting. And whether you're in comfort mode or sport mode, it doesn't really matter, because when that engine or the transmission downshifts, it cuts into your braking or the smoothness of the braking. And so you go from a linear to braking harder, and then back to where you were before, and then it brakes harder as it shifts down in gears, and I don't like that feature at all. And it also suffers from the same wobbling effect, not to the same extent as the GV80, but the same wobbling effect is if I come to a stop right here, I feel like the vehicle wobbles and tilts back and forth quite aggressively. Not as bad as the GV80, mind you, but it's still noticeable. Going over the speed bump, yeah, it handles, it feels very comfortable in speed bumps. It feels well damped over them, so nothing to complain about there. So summarizing the new GV70, this is the most important vehicle for Genesis in their brand's history, arguably. You know, the GV80 was important that it was a first crossover, but it is a little bit more expensive, and this is a much hotter segment in the luxury industry right now, kind of the small, the compact crossover segment. And this vehicle, you can get a base price in the low 40s, this one option to the mid 60s. You're gonna have lots of different types of buyers interested in this vehicle. Every single trim level looks good. The interior is gonna be good on every trim level. You're not always gonna have the suede and the Napa leather, etc. But I mean, you can get everything in this vehicle at $65K for $55K or less if you don't get the Matterhorn expensive paint color, which is an easy pass on, for just around $55K or less. And Genesis, man, they're very, very exciting. They're doing so many things right. The exterior designs are starting to dial in. The new G70 looks great. The new G80 looks great. This GV70 looks great. The dimensions on the GV80 don't really look that, they look a little funky to me. But they have the GV60 coming out which is a full electric car, but it kind of looks weird so far from what I've seen. Really good exterior. Interior is the best in its class, I would say. Even I would say it's a hair better than Lexus NX, but the new NX that's coming out, the new touchscreen, it's 14 inch as well, more vertical than this 14-inch touchscreen, but it's right next to you. It's a lot easier to modify. So they both have their pros and cons, but in terms of interior quality of materials, I feel like this GV70 is going to be hard to beat. And then the engine just kicked on there and shuttered the whole vehicle and shot it forward. It felt like a couple inches. I hate that feature, turning it off. But crazy amounts of power as well. Suspension's good enough. I feel like it's a little bit better than it was on the GV80. The brakes are good, but the transmission kind of messes with the smoothness of the braking feel as you decelerate. So it's not a perfect vehicle by any means, but it does so much so well that if you're in the luxury, I guess if you're in the market for a luxury vehicle and a crossover, you would be, cutting yourself short if you weren't looking at the GV70. And there's just so many safety features in this vehicle. I turned my blinker on while there's a double turning lane and the steering wheel vibrated. It beeps at me saying that there's a car next to me also in the next turning lane, which is not a safety issue, but the car sees it as that. But anyways, that may have made zero sense to you, but I am going to end it there. Genesis GV70, excellent vehicle. I would be going for the turbo 4-cylinder, get a little bit better gas mileage, as well as I would not be getting in trouble with almost 400 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque in the turbo 4-cylinder, and 300 horsepower in the smaller motor is still really, really good, not only for any vehicle, but even for a luxury SUV. 300 horsepower is still a lot of power in the entry-level engine. So anyways, I'm gonna there. I could keep talking about this vehicle for a long time. I'm excited for Genesis because they keep bringing up better designs, better vehicles. Every single vehicle they come out with is better, and that's what you want to see from an automaker. And this one being such a new automaker, shaking up the luxury landscape as we know it, it's cool, and to be sampling these vehicles is really awesome. But guys, I'm gonna end it there. If you enjoyed today's video, smash the like button, subscribe for more Genesis news and reviews, and I'll see you in the next one. In the meantime, I'm gonna enjoy driving this vehicle back home.